All right, looks like it's 9. Do you think we're ready to get started, or are we still waiting for some more folks to jump on?
Yeah, so I say if you want to go ahead and get started, we can go ahead.
All right. So do we know folks that are currently on, were they at last month's session as well, or do we have some new folks on the line?
Oh, you know, I can't tell you right now without comparing the list, but I'm assuming there were quite a few on last time that are on this time as well.
Okay, so noting that, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm just going to kind of pick up with where we left off last month. Last month was kind of a high-level overview of the platform. We talked about all the trading tools in some detail. We mentioned things like restrictions and cash management and that kind of thing. And what I left us with was we'll get into some more details or get into the weeds as it relates to some of those things. So one thing I'd like to know, if you guys can, I think you can raise your hand, or maybe you can just speak up and let me know, how many folks on the line are currently running models? Nobody? Okay, so I'll try not to get into that too deep. But that said, one of the things I mentioned on the last call was the need to create some basic screens. One of those save screens was going to be all accounts. So we want to start with all accounts. And I also mentioned that you should create one for non-discretionary accounts. Okay. So the first thing that I want to touch on is some basic reports that you can review inside of Wealthport. So if we navigate from the dashboard over to the Analyze tab and click on that, we're going to see Run Reports. The first thing I want to point out is Summarized Holdings. And if you're going to use the Summarized Holdings report, you have to have a screen saved. So as a test, if you want to just kind of take this thing for a spin, use that All Accounts Saved screen. And then we'll let that run. Now, what this is going to do for you is it's going to let you look across your book of business, so all your managed accounts that are on the Wealthport platform. The reason that this can be valuable, first of all, we notice here's this position adblx.old. When you see something with a .old, that means that the QSIP has changed, okay? So it's probably correct in your client account, but if you had it in a model, you would still see this position, and your model would need to be updated with the new QSIP. Okay, so one of the things this report provides to you is a list of any positions that went through a QSIP change. Okay, and if we just think about it from looking across our book of business, one of the interesting things that you can review here. So a lot of times, what happens is offices don't necessarily start out with models. You know, that may be something that they work towards. Sometimes what I hear is, hey, we don't run models. That's just not what we do. Now, in cases that is absolutely correct. However, what we will do is look at your book of business, and we can start to see, well, how many accounts hold this position? Usually there's a trend, because advisors are good about using similar products for their clients. They just do it in their head. They just don't necessarily get it down on paper. This is one way that you can look across your book of business to see, am I actually really running models with a few outliers? Okay, so if I look across my book of business, do I see that, wow, a lot of accounts are holding the same positions? And so if you're going to move towards models, this is one thing to look at to see, what am I already doing across the vast majority of my clients' accounts that might be positions that you would want to include in models if you're going to move that way. Obviously, to make the review easier, you can export that information to Excel and sort it and clean it up however you like. Okay. Any questions on the Summarized Holdings report? Okay. Sounds like somebody is still unmuted. I don't, just if it's you. We noticed that we're looking at the security level at this point, and you can also look at the model level, but if you're not running models, it doesn't have any impact at this point. So you can start with the security level, review it here, export it for a deeper look into that, and see what you find. Okay. Also under reports, you're going to see bulk reports. So again, there are a variety of reports available to you. So if we say run new report, you will see two options, compliance and operations. If we run a compliance report, and I think we talked about this a little bit, but let's say we want to look at non-model holdings. We want to look at it at the account screen level, excuse me, and we want to look at it in account mode. So, like we talked about before, you want that save screen or some save screen to pull the accounts in. So we're going to run this, and then we have to wait patiently. And there it is. So what's this going to tell us? If we are running models, this is going to tell us any position in the account that is not part of our model. What should that do for you? That should drive you to take an action. You're going to want to restrict these holdings so that once you rebalance, you don't inadvertently sell it. Okay. And another thing I'll draw your attention to right here. So you see the .ina? Basically, that's an invalid ticker at this point. It's no longer a valid security, and so you may want to review your accounts for these types of holdings or your models for these types of holdings. You would also see that .ina security in the summarized holdings report if we would have looked far enough into that. Okay, so this is a good report to run if you're running models. If you're going to run models, maybe you check it periodically just to make sure that you have accounted for those as needed. Okay. Additionally, you have security concentration. So there's a one that's already been created that will just run again. You can see that here. I'll show you what that looks like. You set the parameters for this. Basically, you say, show me all the accounts that hold, in this case, 5% or more in equities or ETFs, mutual funds, etc. It's going to pull up the account. It's going to tell you the holdings, and then you can work with this data as you see fit. It may be more valuable if there were some expectations from the OSJ level for their advisors, that kind of thing. Okay. Now, if we look at operations, we have a couple options. If we look at restriction security cross-reference, what is that? Let's take a look. Basically, we'll just run it like as is. We spent some time talking about restrictions during our last call, and we said, you know, that's one way to take care of holdings that whether you're running models or not, you know, you're going to hold this position in the client account, but you're really not going to manage it. And we talked about you could use do not buy, do not sell, or do not trade, or unmanaged. Now, you can see some do not trades, and I talked about this before. This is another way to review. So TIPWX used to be restricted. This tells us it went through a QSIP change, so the new one is not restricted. This means that you may want to review this to make sure, again, that if you previously had this restricted, you're now restricting the appropriate QSIP. Okay. Sorry about that. Any questions on the restriction security cross-reference report and how you might use it? Okay. not going to worry about zero and unpriced securities. It's really what it sounds like. It's just another way to look for those to make sure that basically what happens if you don't account for those in some way and you're running a rebalance, it can cause you to see invalid trades on the proposed trade screen. It doesn't affect all the other securities, but it does bring up this little red circle as a warning. And if you want to account for those, probably the best option is going to be that unmanaged restriction, because it's just going to pull out of the screen entirely and you won't see it. So last thing for models, if we look at the information available for models, let's look at the detail, all models, and let's just circle back a little bit, see what we see here. Again, we'll just wait for that to run. There it is. Click on completed to bring up the results. Open that spreadsheet. I like to clean it up just a little. And then this is just going to show you, you can go back in time and look at previous history of a model. But the other thing that this is going to show you, if you take advantage of setting up alternate securities, for example, or holds, you're going to see that here. And alternate securities are set up at the model level. Okay, and you can see that here if you want to say, hey, where did I set those up at? You can also see inactive securities, which we have already talked about, those .INAs. This doesn't give us the security, but it does tell us that this model holds an invalid security, inactive security rather, excuse me, okay? So if you like spreadsheets and you like to review data in that way, these are some reports that you can use to do so, okay? Any questions on any of the reports that we just took a look at? Okay. Now, another thing I mentioned during the last call was the need for a process. We talked about the fact that there is a basic 5-step block trading process, and it doesn't matter whether you are rebalancing or using one of the other tools. And basically, you know, that basic 5-step process looks like this. So you're going to screen for your accounts, locate the accounts that you want to take an action on. Okay, so in that case, we'll do something like this. And then we'll search, and I'll get into the weeds in a moment, but we're just going to go over that basic process. So here are the accounts that are linked to this model. First thing I'm going to do is I want to review trading status reason. If I see anything in these two columns, that should cause me to either stop what I'm doing and review these accounts, or exclude them from the account set that I move forward with. Now, since the last time we spoke, Folio has released an enhancement, and I believe that the enhancement email from my team either went out yesterday or today. But basically, this says restrictions yes, no, or you'll see some potentially, if it wasn't linked to a model, you'd see an NA. So what does this really mean? If I click on this, it opens up restrictions that we have in play. Now, whether or not it says yes, no, or NA, this is still an active button, and you can still see the restrictions that are in play for your account. Basically, the way the logic works today, which we're working with Folio because we think we can make it better, there's going to be a yes or a no if the account is linked to a model and the restrictions in play will affect the proposed trades. And so what I mean by that is you might see an adjusted model target, okay, for those of you, if you're familiar with that at all. The other thing I want to point out is Folio made a simple enhancement. If there was a way for me to see you guys raise your hand, I would ask, how often do you come in here and see a whole list of restrictions that you'd rather not see? And we used to tell you, click this button, because when you came in here before this week, it looked like this. And you'd say, well, how do I find all my own restrictions? Because these are all sponsor level. We'd say hide sponsor level. Well, we had Folio flip a switch. So now when you come in here by default, you're going to see just the restrictions that you've established for that account. So we thought it was a pretty easy thing, and they got it fixed for us. That should save you some time. So after I review the accounts, if I'm comfortable moving forward, right, I would check the box, go to actions, and go to the appropriate trading tool. Simply, for example, I'm going to run a rebalance, but keep in mind that this process doesn't change relative to the tool. Okay, so I've reviewed my accounts. I'm comfortable with this particular group. I'm going to move forward, and this is going to move us into proposed trades. Excuse me. Where's leave? Create new rebalance. If we change nothing on this screen and just run the rebalancer, the system is going to attempt to get all the securities back to its target. Now, a few things to be aware of that not everybody uses. Again, this is kind of after you got your feet wet and you're kind of driving this thing. For example, you'll see this buy adjustment percentage. This is always in play for rebalances. And what does it mean? It means if the system was supposed to purchase $1,000 of a security, and it will actually purchase 995. Now, generally, we wouldn't suggest that you change this, but there are cases. Say the market is going down, and you decide that you want to get a little more defensive, so you could adjust this down, and it would just hold back more cash. Now, why do I bring that up? Basically, what that would save you from doing is having to go into your model and adjust the percentages there for cash. Okay. Some advisors find this to be valuable, tax awareness. So right now, by default, it's set short-term, long-term capital gains and losses. Just allow it. Some advisors find it valuable to flag that. Okay. We don't ever see it prevent, or rarely. Typically, it's just if the system thinks the conditions are right for short-term, long-term capital gains and losses, it'll flag the trade on the next screen. Okay. So we're going to run the rebalancer, and then we're going to talk about things that you should be looking for on the proposed trade screen. This is our favorite 6-digit number, so we obviously write that down. I know we spent a little time talking about this during the last call, so immediately we're at the 10,000 foot view, and we see that this account has a pending amount. Now, this happens in cash management, so I will walk you through how to take advantage of this. But basically what this is saying to the system is, I want to raise $30,000 plus whatever my model calls for, okay? Plus whatever my model calls for. And the way that we would see this used most frequently is the client calls in and says, hey, I need to take out money. I want to buy a boat or a car or whatever. So, and shortly I'll show you how to enter that. So you're going to trade it. You're going to see that pending amount here. And when it's done, the system is going to have $30,000 in cash set aside in the account plus the amount that the model calls for. Okay. We talked in the last call about looking at buys and sells and how cash percentage, resulting cash percentage can be an indicator, an immediate indicator if there's a problem. But obviously, again, you don't see all the detail without opening the trades. Now, one thing we would suggest, obviously, if we were good with these trades, we could move forward into order management where we're going to modify, verify, release if appropriate. To take it a step further, what we would suggest, if you're placing a large number of trades, and it doesn't matter whether it's a rebalance or another tool, we would say best practice would be to export this information, okay? And you can get all the trades for all the accounts in one spreadsheet. Now, why is that valuable? This is kind of what the system proposed to happen, and then when you review your trades, you know, after settlement or you wait a day, that's what did happen, and this gives you a record of that. This information that we see on this screen can be viewed for up to 30 days post-trade, but after that, it's gone. So if I'm trading a large number of accounts, I'm going to make it part of my practice to export the information from this screen, and then just dump it in a file. And again, I don't know who all is on the call today, and I don't know if anyone has put this into practice yet, but basically, you're going to maybe create a file on a shared drive, depending on how many folks in the office are trading. You might call it Wealthport, and then you decide how deep you want that to go. Is it year, month, day, whatever? And I may have shared on the last call that I did get a phone call from one of the offices that we work with quite a bit, and this definitely saved the individual responsible for the trades when the boss knocked on his door, because he had saved all of the information. So he could show him exactly what transpired.
Hey, Austin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I heard that one example of why that practice would be beneficial.
Yes.
Is there another? Because I've never done it, and this is Fran Toller, and I just wanted to understand if there was some really big payoff for instituting this as part of our practice.
Well, and then momentarily I'll walk through a couple other things and put it all back together. But I think that's the big one. So it's been a long time, Fran, by the way. Just saw your name on the trading list the other day and was just thinking we hadn't heard from you in a while. Because this information is only available 30 days post-trade, that's why we think it's valuable. Because if you call me or call the team and you say, hey, something happened, and for whatever reason, everything looked good, and you reviewed it at some point and it looks fine, but let's say for whatever reason it's 30 days past trade date and we find an issue, we don't have the luxury of going back and looking at this, and this tells us a lot on the front end. So if you have it and we say, hey, Fran, do you have the proposed trades from that day? And you're like, well, yeah, here's the spreadsheet, send it to us encrypted, we'll take a look at it. We might be able to diagnose what happened much faster, because once this information is gone, it's gone. And for the time it takes to export it and dump it in a file, it's pretty fast once you just make it part of what you do if you're trading a large number of accounts.
Is it only available to download when you're in this screen where you've generated orders but not approved them yet?
No, and that's kind of what I was alluding to. So it's available 30 days post-trade. So as we talk through this, you can either grab it here, you can grab it from this screen if you like, or there's another tool. Let me just show you that. So assume that we're comfortable with our trades, and again, doesn't matter the tool, we move forward to order management where we modify, verify, release if appropriate, and we did not grab the information from this screen. So scenario ID in question is 698,944. I'm just going to scratch that down. 698,944. Okay. So say you didn't grab the information. The other way to see this, and this is where we go, is scenario history. For 30 days, you can come into scenario history. So I went to the trade icon and selected scenario history. You can dump in the scenario ID that you've written down. It was 244. Oh, let's do, there we go. 698,944, sorry about that. And here it is. So when you call in, this is where we go. And we click on this little box, and we can see everything that you saw before you sent the trades to order management. So this would be another way to get that same information, Fran. You could do it. You could release the trades, review them the following day, and then come back and get this if you like.
Okay, really, or I could go back into the last 30 days of trades and start those files.
Yes. Yep, you sure could. So, and then, we have even gone so far as to say, and I know some offices are already doing this piece. So say you run your trades to order management, you modify, you verify, you release if appropriate. You come in the next day, you can take that same scenario ID and you can review what order management showed. Okay, so you kind of have this look at, here's what the system wanted to do. The following day, you basically, in order management, you have, here's basically what it did. This is what was reported back from the custodian. So if you marry those two screens, because they're both exportable, you've got some decent supplemental information for your file. And maybe it sounds like a lot at first, but really, if you just make it part of the process, it is pretty fast.
That's fair. That helps. Thank you.
You bet. So, and while we're here looking, I know we talked about this on the first call, and I mentioned these things called notes, okay? You'll notice that when there's a note on the account, it follows us through the system. So this is one place that you would see it. Some advisors use this to tell themselves that, hey, this client is taking a distribution, and they use restrictions to manage that. And so they'll say, so maybe the cash over here is much higher than expected. Well, they've got a visual trigger on this screen to tell them, oh yeah, that's why I did it. That's why I did it. So not everyone manages in that way, but notes can be valuable. Some people put things in there like, you don't have to track last rebalance date at that point, but some people do. You can make it public or private. So if it's a private note, only you see it. If you make it public, anybody who has access to the account can't see it. Okay. Any questions about scenario history and potentially pulling that trade data from the proposed trade screen, scenario history, as well as order management? Okay. All right, so.
Your Chandler Bing references.
Sorry?
No, this is Brian Beamer. I was just saying I like your Chandler Bing references.
Well, I did grow up watching that sitcom, so they probably come out once in a while. And we spent time being creative, and that's how we know that people are watching, right? Because if we don't get any comments about the names of our clients, we know they're not watching. So thanks for noticing. So let's say that, let's talk about cash management for a minute. So just to demonstrate all the information that's available in cash management, I'm going to select all of these accounts. And I'm going to go to actions. Remember, it's screen first, okay? And this is a little bit deeper in terms of pre-trade reviews. So now I'm going to take these into cash management. And you might say, well, I'm not going to use cash management to manage raising cash for my clients or various other things. But the reason this can be important, the reason this can be an additional step to your pre-trade process is this. So you see the account number, obviously the client name, the program. You see the market value as Wealthport recognizes it, because we know Wealthport doesn't account for intraday activity. You see the cash balance as Wealthport recognizes it, okay? Now this is important. So we know some offices, they don't use cash management to raise cash for their clients, but they absolutely use it to review cash balance in their accounts before they trade them, okay? You can see if you have any open orders on the Wealthport platform. If you're using pending amounts, this is key, because if there's any pending amount out here, it can impact your trades, okay? You can see the resulting cash after the pending amount. You can see resulting cash percentage, which some advisors like to look just at this level, like what's the cash percentage in my accounts right now, and then obviously you can filter these and export them if you want to look a little deeper. It also tracks last rebalance date, and if you have notes on the account, this is going to be the first place that you can kind of review them as part of your trading process, okay? So basically what happens is you screen for your accounts. So we're adding a couple new steps, guys. So it looks like this. You screen for your accounts. You decide, well, those two have a problem. I know I'm not going to move forward with those two, so I'm going to uncheck the box, okay? Next, I'm going to run them into cash management, okay? And I'm looking at anything unusual. You know, does the market value look reasonable? Cash balance. Do I have any open orders on the platform already? That should be an indicator to don't move forward with that account until you review it. Resulting cash, and obviously cash percentage. This is key, okay? If you have pending amounts, basically, again, these are going to impact your trades. So if it's supposed to be there, great. Then leave it and move forward. If not, this is your opportunity to remove it. If you don't remove it, it impacts your trades. You'll see it on the next screen like we discussed, but you can't do anything with this pending amount from the proposed trade screen. So if you catch it on the proposed trade screen, you would have to stop what you were doing, come back in here, remove it, and then run it again. Okay. And then finally, we could review notes to make sure that everything was in order, or again, is there something I need to be considering before I move forward with these accounts? Regardless of the trading tool, this process is valuable. Okay. Then we would run them to the proposed trade screen like we just talked about. You would do your review of your trades. You would consider exporting the trade information from that screen or getting it later through scenario history. You're going to move through order management, modify, verify, release if appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? Or do we see the value or understand how this could be valuable to us as part of our trade review process if we were trading, especially if we're trading a significant number of accounts? Now, what can cash management do? Okay, so we can see that you can put pending amounts on this. And what this means is, if I trade this account right now, like we talked about, the system is going to attempt to generate $30,000 in cash or leave $30,000 in cash available plus whatever the model calls for example. Okay. So I'm going to remove it just so we can walk through how it works. Is there anybody on the line right now who's using cash management to raise cash for their clients? This is probably the most underutilized tool on the platform until we sit down and really walk through it. Okay. So we'll just use Meg's account, and currently Meg has a cash balance of $5,000. We can see she doesn't have any open orders. You know, cash percentage of 2.98%. Now, one-time withdrawal. One-time withdrawal. This is the most common example. Now, this is a little annoying, so I feel your pain. You have to key in the account number. We have asked for an enhancement for this, so hopefully that happens sooner than later. Okay, and then we put in the amount of cash that we want to make available for the client. So we think about cash management as a short-term way to raise cash for your client versus restrictions, which we talked about in the last call, being more of a long-term solution. So in this case, let's say that Meg needs $45,000. Okay. It's going to refresh so we can see it. We'll pull that up here. And now we see this pending amount. Now, what you should have noticed is the market value was reduced by the amount of this number right here. Okay. Does that make sense? And obviously this just tells you, you know, how short you are, but nonetheless, you put in the amount that you want to raise. So let's just run this as an example. So I'm going to check the box. I'm going to go to trading tools. In this case, I'm going to choose rebalancer just for the sake of argument. Make no changes here, run our rebalancer. Obviously, this is going to move us to the proposed trade screen. It's kind of up to you at this point. Once you review the trades, if you want to export the information or not. Maybe it's less important when it's one account, but certainly, again, like we talked about, if it's multiple accounts, it would be worth considering. So what we can see is the market value shown here is less this. Okay, so it basically just takes that money and sort of hides it, so that when you're done with this rebalance, you're going to have $45,000 plus an additional $7,800 because it's 6% of this number. Okay, now why is this important? Things to consider. The client needs to withdraw the amount you've entered here or more, okay? If you're going to use this tool, you most definitely want to review your accounts in cash management because you want to note any pending amounts that could be in play and make sure that they should be. But the key is the client needs to take this amount out or more. If the client takes this amount or more, then this number falls off, okay? If not, we're going to see it in cash management, and we call it stale cash. And that's why we're going to run our accounts through cash management to review for pending amounts, especially stale cash. If there's stale cash there, you need to remove it before proceeding because it will impact your trades. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So we'll go back to cash management and talk through what else it can do for you. So now when we come in here, what we should see is, again, this pending amount that we put on. So say it's a few weeks later and the money actually was never sent out. So this number is still here. Or if you sent out $40,000 instead of 45, you're going to see an additional $5,000 sitting here. And if it shouldn't be there, you need to remove it. Okay, but again, you can sort this and spot it pretty quickly. One thing you can do is you can say, just show me pending requests. So show me, and there you go. The only two in play with the accounts that we're looking at. If they should be there, if they should remain, leave it. If not, take it off. Okay. Now, the first thing we looked at was one-time withdrawal. Again, that's a quick way to raise cash for your client. We find that to be the fastest option for short-term solutions. Next, we have periodic withdrawals. Now, the establishment and execution of distributions and withdrawals, it still happens on the custodial platform. However, this tool gives you a way to tell Wealthport that the client takes $1,500 on the 15th of every month. And why is that important? 4 days prior to the date that they should take that withdrawal, Wealthport will post. If you're short the cash, you're going to see a red number here. It's going to become a pending amount, and Wealthport's going to post that on the 11th. Okay. So what does that do? I told you that the pending amount kind of hides that cash, or it tells you that it's negative. So when you go to trade it or rebalance it, it's going to raise that cash for you. Okay. So on the 11th, if the client was supposed to take it out on the 15th, Wealthport is going to post the amount, and basically it's a way to prevent you from spending the cash. That's essentially what's happening. Now, if you get your clients kind of into buckets, so I have clients to take it on the 15th and the 25th, and going through cash management becomes part of your pre-trade review, then you're going to know when to expect pending amounts to be posted here. And again, that's a quick way. If it's not right around the 15th or the 25th, 4 days prior, then you need to take a closer look at those and say, should they still be in play? Okay. So again, the money still goes out through the custodial platform, but this is going to give you a way. Obviously, you put the account number in the amount, and then you say, well, what's the frequency, right? And what's the start date? And you do have the ability to post it like immediately. If it's going to be the 15th going forward, but you need to post one today, you could certainly do that. Okay, so that's one way to manage with withdrawals and distributions on the platform. Is there anybody on the line that would currently be taking advantage of that?
Austin.
Yes.
Hi, it's Kathy. We actually do use that already, and I just wanted to make a quick comment on the one-time withdrawal.
Yes.
If you click on the green plus button on the right-hand side,
yes. Yep.
It does not require you to input the account number again.
You are correct. You're correct, Kathy. The only reason that I started over here was simply because I wanted to draw everyone's attention to what else was under this drop down, what other features were available. But you're correct. So
Okay,
Once you become
thank you.
familiar with how one-time withdrawal works, what Kathy is saying is, in that case, you don't have to key in the account number. It populates it for you, and you go through that process, and off you go. I was just drawing your attention to this drop-down simply because this is where you're going to take advantage of the periodic withdrawal, and last but not least is the pending deposit. Okay, pending deposit is useful when pending deposit is useful when the client deposits cash in their account, and you can see it on the platform. So you go into NetX or Wealthscape, you can see the client just deposited 10 grand, and they're calling you saying, hey, I want to get in the market now. Wealthport doesn't see it. Remember that Wealthport is a day behind as it relates to intraday activity and that kind of thing. However, the one caveat to that is this tool inside of cash management called pending deposit. So if I selected an account number and I said, well, I know I can see that this account has an additional $10,000 on the custodial platform. I could put in $10,000. It's going to increase the account value, the market value of the account, and the cash available to trade, and then you could trade it. Okay. So again, we caution. We say use that with caution because you want to make sure that the cash is visible on the custodial platform before you take advantage of that. You know, you don't want to live by the checks in the mail type of thing, because if the cash isn't there, that can create some issues, obviously. Okay. Any questions about these three options? Okay. And obviously, if you set up a large number of periodic instructions or withdrawals, it's actually going to reside under this tab once you get it set up. So we do have one built, and you can see the way we built it. Another character from Friends. You can see the way we built it is, hey, they take out $1,000. The trigger date, you can see. And obviously, it calculates differently if there's a weekend or that kind of thing. You can see when we started it. You can see the frequency, last time we modified it, and we actually have a note on this account, and it could be related to that if we wanted to review it. So if you set up a significant number of periodic instructions, periodic withdrawals, you can review the whole list on this screen. Okay. Any other questions about cash management? So I'll just stop and ask, does it make sense in terms of the process I laid out from screening for your accounts? You will review. You'll review these columns, right? If you see anything here, you want to pause. Then you're going to take these accounts into cash management. You're going to review cash percentage. You might review market value. And then from, you're going to review for pending amounts. You're going to turn them off if they really shouldn't be in play, because we know those can impact your trades. You will move, you'll select a trading tool, maybe the rebalancer, right? You'll set that up in the rebalancer. You're going to move into the proposed trade screen, review your trades, potentially export from that screen and put that in a file, move on to order management, modify, verify, release if appropriate, come back in the next day, export the information from order management, and then dump that in a file. Are there any users on the phone currently that do any piece of what I just described as a little deeper dive into kind of your trading process? So I understand you may not take all these steps and implement them immediately, but consider some of them, and certainly, you know, give our team a call as you're working through it. If you have some questions about, you know, this is how we want to implement it, or, you know, did we miss something? It's been a while since the call. Maybe just scribble down some notes and we can walk through it. At this point, that is really what we're teaching. Once advisors get familiar with the platform and they're using it, and we start adding a couple additional steps to their process, that's what it's going to be. That's what we're sharing at Ignite, Connect, and some other events.
Hey, Austin.
Yes.
This is Fran again. I'm pretty sure I only mentally absorbed about 10% of what you just taught. But I got a little of it. So is this something where when I'm doing trades, I could call in for a little help creating a better process?
Yes, yeah, and that's really where we're at, Fran. We're to the point where we have this subset of advisors who have been using it for a while, and now that's what we're doing. So I think I may have mentioned on the last call, we started traveling last May and just getting into offices with advisors, going into a conference room, shutting the door. And that's what we started working through, was a more complete trading process, which often we implemented most, if not all of the steps that I outlined. And when it gets down to the nitty gritty of the way they run their business, then we make other suggestions about, here's some other things that Wealthport is able to do for you in terms of what you're doing.
I think we'd really be interested in that, because I feel like our process is far too dependent on my memory banks, and we're trying to work towards more of a structured team process. So I think we would really benefit from your help there.
Yeah, so we could set something up. We could start with some phone calls, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't know exactly where you're located.
Right outside DC.
Right outside
Silver
DC.
Spring, Maryland. Yeah.
Will you be, I don't want to hijack the call, will you be attending Ignite or Connect or any of those Cambridge events? Because we will be there. And we found that some of the best use of our time is meeting with advisors more on a one-on-one basis, and just sitting down and working through basically what you just said. And we just, again, we have a room for the week, and we just, plug in a laptop to the projector, and we just work through the way you're doing things and offer suggestions and enhancements to your process. And we can start, immediately via phone call and WebEx and that kind of thing, if you're interested.
Yeah, we can talk that through. I think because I want to involve the whole team, and I know we're not all going to Ignite, that we would, choose a process that everyone could be in on. Okay.
Yep, definitely. Just we can circle up offline, or you can shoot my team an email, and we can work something out. Okay. What time is it? We have a little time left. Okay. We never get as far as I would hope. I know we talked about restrictions. I'm sorry. I know we talked about alerts last time, and I think I shared that one of the more helpful alerts that offices are using is monitoring for cash coming in. And I may have asked this on the last call, I don't remember. But anybody on the line do you have your client's dollar cost average, for example? So instead of setting up automatic buys on the custodial platform, if you have them dollar cost average, there is an alert that you can set up here, that's going to hit when appropriate. And then, like we talked about on our last call, you can then look at the affected accounts by going to the screener. So I'm bringing this full circle. So you could use an alert to capture a specific set of accounts, right? You can take them to the screener because they need some action, okay? And then you're going to go through that same process that we just talked about. You're going to have your accounts on your screener. You're going to review. We know that you can click on this, whether it says yes, no, or NA, you can still click on this, and I think this is important, and again, this is new. You can click on this button to see any restrictions that are in play for your account before you get to the proposed trade screen. It doesn't matter whether it's a rebalance or something else, okay? So we've done that. We think we're good. We're going to run them through cash management to review for pending amounts or cash percentage, or and then move on to the appropriate trading tool, and then continue through our trading process, exporting data from the proposed trade screen, potentially order management, etc. So kind of bringing that thought full circle. Essentially, you can start from the dashboard. You can use alerts to trigger, right, to tell you it's time to take action if you don't have some other method in place. And for example, if you had your client's dollar cost averaging, and again, nobody said yay or nay, but let's just assume that there's at least someone on the phone who does, you can set up the alert to monitor for cash coming in. And then you can decide as part of your process, well, we know we have clients doing this. how frequently are we going to rebalance them, for example? And instead of having them buy into one or two positions on the custodial platform, pips and swips, you can shut those down, you see, and then invest that money in a model, for example, if that's how you're going to run it. And you can start the whole process from the dashboard, which is really the expectation, run it to the screener for review, cash management, and so on. Last time, I don't think I did a good job of leaving any time at all for any questions about anything Wealthport trading. I think I talked almost the whole time, and so I see we have about 10 minutes, and I never get as far as I would like. But are there any questions at all about anything we talked about on the first call or anything we've discussed on this call? Are there things that you'd like to talk about? If we continue to make these available quarterly or semi-annually, I can start making sure that we touch on other areas. But again, cash management is one of the most underutilized tools on the platform in a variety of ways. So I wanted to make sure we spent some time there. Quiet group today. I don't know. Sebastian, are you on the line today? I know we talked.
Yes, I'm here.
So would you be willing to talk about what, if any, of the steps we talked about or tools that we talked about for cash management, for example, that you use just from your side?
Sure thing. So yeah, with our team-directed program, which are the models that we're 8 models that we're running for the advisors in our group if they choose to use them. If somebody calls up or emails us and says, hey, I have a client in your program, we need $5,000, we go right into cash management, do the one-time withdrawal for $5,000. From that point, we'll check off the box to the left of the account and just go right to the rebalancer from that cash management tool. Free up that cash by doing the sales only, and then once the funds settle, we'll go into Wealthscape or NetX360 and make that distribution for that client. And that's the only way we're using it. Jen, are you on the line? Are we using the periodic tool as well, or just the one-time tool, the periodic one for the plans that we have set up? Okay, so sorry, she must be muted over there. I heard her. She said the one time, not the periodic or the deposit.
Was it fair to say, because and if I'm wrong, stop me, but I think when we visited the office, it seems so long ago now, that at that point you weren't using cash management as much? And then is that accurate, Sebastian, or were you taking advantage of it before we were in the office? I know you picked up some news.
I would say we were. The ones we, I think, pay more attention to now is just when there's not enough cash in the account to meet what the model, allocates, or when there's actually too much cash built up in the account for some of those accounts that are leaving dividends and capital gains that are going to cash. But no, we were using it, I believe, back then. It's just more getting a better handle on the cash that's held in each account.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns, complaints? We take it all. Any suggestions for, hey, it'd be nice if this is how I'm using it today, and if it could. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, or sometimes advisors don't know what they don't know, and it's possible that the system could support what you need it to do if we know it's a question that you have.
I have a quick suggestion. Would just be maybe doing some future webinars with some more in-depth case studies, just going through, hey, here's what we would like to do, and then watching step by step how to go through certain specific examples.
Okay. And who am I speaking with?
My name is Joe Henninger.
Okay.
I'd like to second that, because one of the problems I have following what you're saying, Austin, is those of us who are advisors, our little brains are going the whole time, how do I apply this? How do I apply this? When would I use this? How do I apply this? And it's very hard to grasp the information without first having the context of a scenario. So, Joe, thank you for bringing that up. That was really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that kind of lines up with what we were talking about before. Like, there's something about sitting down with advisors and just working through real life examples that you have. And so, you know, again, so if anybody on the line, it will be at Ignite or any Connect events or anything like that, we're going to be there. So that's what we're looking to do. So please look us up, and we can sit down and just work through specific examples. And to that point, everybody on the line, you are welcome to shoot me an email with specific real life examples that you would like to see, and then we can build those out to the point that if it's very significant and it's kind of intricate, we can go as far as to build an account on the platform that looks like your client account, right? So if it's important for us to understand the holdings and those details, we can do that, and then provide basically what would it look like to walk through this process for my client account. We changed the name on it, obviously, but it has the holdings and the weightings and all of those things. You lay out the scenario, we'll walk through it and how you might manage it. Yeah, so please feel free, and I'm happy to do that if we need to take it a step further. And I know, again, it's easy to burn through an hour with cash management because it's so underutilized. If we need to have additional webinars, I'm sure Sebastian can kind of work that out. But you guys are welcome to fire off an email to me. My email address is Austin, AUSTIN .Martin, MARTIN @CIR2.com with any real life examples you want to see. If we need to get together and do this outside a webinar, we are willing to do that as well. So please don't hesitate to ask. Typically, we try to set up sessions, you know, one-offs outside of trading hours. But for those of you, obviously on East Coast time, it's pretty easy for me. I'm usually in here at 7 Central, so that's 8 your time. So, you know, that makes it easy for me to set something up. Or after 2:30 Central, we could also work to set up a phone call. So don't hesitate to ask.
That would be great. Thank you.
You bet. Anything else? All right. Well, Sebastian, I think I'm done for now. I don't want to dive into anything with 3 minutes to go. I guess you can circle up with your folks and let me know if you think it'd be valuable to have an additional webinar with case studies. Happy to do it. So if I get feedback from everybody on the line, I can put something together.
Okay, I think what we might do is maybe send out an email and just say, shoot us over some examples of what you're looking for. Maybe, you know,
okay.
Calls you get from clients or emails, and then we can put a list together for you. That
Yep.
way you know
okay.
What to talk about on the next phone call.
Okay. Yep. And happy to do it. Yeah. And you know, this is we've been doing webinars for a while, but really getting into the weeds and doing case studies is a new thing. So I appreciate the suggestion, and we'll that'll be our takeaway.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Fran, can I give you a buzz when we're off the line? Are you available for like 10 minutes? Oh, must have lost her.
Fell off. I can't tell on my end if she's still on the webinar or not.
Okay. Okay, no worries. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining, and I'll look forward to talking to you guys again in the future.
All right, thanks, Austin. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.